The topic of our CLE today is PIP, all right, PIP. And this is really gauged for young attorneys who don't have a whole lot of experience in personal injury in general and automobile PIP in particular, okay?
Okay.
So I want to kind of take us through the basic steps to build foundation for what we're going to be talking about. What is PIP?
That is basic. PIP stands for Personal Injury Protection. In New Jersey, quick history lesson. I'll make it really quick because
No, take your time.
Well, I always hated history,
That's
so
okay.
I'm going to make it quick. Prior to 1972, if you were involved in a car accident, you sustained injuries, your medical bills were your problem. They would be considered an element of damages, excuse me, I'm sorry, and you would have to wait. If there were any liability issues, you would have to wait until your case is resolved to figure out whether or not you were going to be reimbursed for your medical expenses.
So you'd be paying out of pocket in the meantime?
Or if you had health insurance, yes.
Got it.
So that could be particularly onerous depending on how much treatment you needed and how expensive it was. If you didn't have insurance, that would obviously be a problem.
So somebody who with a back injury that was going to require ongoing therapy, this could be really problematical for somebody like that.
Absolutely. So in 1972, the legislature enacted the PIP statutes, and that's where we get the no fault from, because with the introduction of the no fault system, it no longer mattered who caused the accident. In fact, you could have a one-car accident. You could hit a pole, a tree, a deer, what have you. Fault was irrelevant. Your auto insurance carrier would pay for your medical bills related to that accident.
Now, there have been numerous iterations of the liability insurance laws since 1972, many times geared toward trying to reduce the cost of premiums.
Correct.
And how has this impacted on the cost for PIP? Is PIP really kind of outside of this and still in the same essential form that it was back in 1972, or has PIP changed over the years as the rest of liability insurance has changed for cars?
In some respects, it's changed tremendously. The basic principle of not considering fault and getting the bills paid promptly has remained constant.
Okay.
What has changed is, for example, in 1998, they enacted ACRA, the Automobile Insurance Cost Reduction Act.
Right. And
that created two classes, if you will, or categories of coverage. You have now your standard policy and your basic policy. The standard policy still provides for a maximum $250,000 coverage limit.
Is there a minimum amount of coverage that you can get in PIP on a standard policy?
On a standard policy, you can go as low as 15.
Okay. Does that, in your estimation, is there a significant difference in the premium that somebody would pay on a standard policy by opting for a $15,000 PIP as opposed to a $250,000 PIP?
I can only speak from my own personal knowledge. When I fill out my coverage renewal form every year, it is, they always tell you you can save X percent by selecting the various options. I don't remember what the percentage is, but it's a fair amount of the PIP premium. Don't forget, when you get your declaration sheet, when you get your premium bill, there's a variety of coverages in there. You have your liability coverage, you have your PIP coverage, you may have under and uninsured motorist coverage, you may have collision coverage. Taking the lower limits on PIP is only going to save you on the PIP component of your premium.
And just as a lawyer advising clients, would you tell them that you're insane to have anything less than $250,000 of PIP coverage?
At this time, being a dispute resolution professional, I wouldn't be able to counsel anyone on what coverage to take.
I'm talking about if I were an attorney,
okay,
would I be out of line by saying you really should maximize your PIP coverage because you never know what's going to happen to you and you don't know how much treatment you're going to need, you don't know what your medicals are going to be, so it's better to err on the side of caution?
I think that's true of any kind of insurance. I mean, you always want to take out the maximum coverage you can get within, the means of your budget.
Are there situations where the legislature authorizes additional coverage in the nature of PIP beyond $250,000, or is that a cap for everybody?
That's a cap for everyone. There is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, there is recourse if your bills go over the 250.
Right.
There is another source you can go to. It's the Unsatisfied Claim and Judgment Fund.
The UCMJ.
Which is a state fund. When you get your annual bill, that's another little portion that you'll see down there. It's now actually PLIGA, Property Liability Insurance Guarantee Association.
Right.
that there's a pool that it's a surcharge that's everyone pays on their auto premium, and the carriers deposit it with the state, and it's a fund to protect people who are injured so seriously that they go above the 250.
Okay, and how much farther above the 250 will the fund carry you?
I don't believe there is a maximum on the fund. I could be wrong.
Okay. By the way, I don't know why I said UCMJ. I'm thinking about military law for some reason. It used to be called something, though, unsatisfied claim. So
It used to be UCJ and F.
That's it. So I knew there was a U in there. So now it's PLEGA, it's called?
Yep.
And what does that stand for again?
It's NJ PLEGA, New Jersey Property and Liability Insurance Guarantee Association.
All right. Now, let me just make sure I understand this for the standard policy. By New Jersey law, every policy of insurance for a car or for a motor vehicle, let me go back, just cars, talk about this point, must have a provision in it providing for PIP coverage.
Correct.
That amount of PIP coverage is a function of how much premium you're willing to pay.
Correct.
That will range between $15,000 on the low end and $250,000 on the high end.
Correct.
And that's in your standard policy.
Standard policy, yes. It's
for motor vehicles, or actually for automobiles.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's either two. You can't pick any number you want between 15 and 250. It's either 250, 150, 75, 50, or 15.
So the Department of Banking and Insurance sets these regulations, and all the insurance companies have to give you this particular breakdown.
Correct.
Okay. Now let's talk about basic policies.
Okay.
Tell me, what is a basic policy?
A basic policy is, first of all, you can take a maximum of $15,000 in coverage.
Okay. In the basic policy.
In the basic.
So it's 5, 10, 15?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the cost of the premium? In other words, how do you go get a basic policy? How does someone do that?
There is, when you either take out a new policy or when you do your renewal, you have to fill out a coverage selection form. By regulation, the carrier must have a signed coverage selection form for someone who elects to take the basic policy. So all you really need to do is fill out the basic policy renewal or application and check off what limits you want.
Can anybody get a basic policy, or are there some income restrictions on who can get the policy?
The income restrictions are on the special policy. That was created in 2003.
Okay.
But for the basic, though, I would like to just make another point. Aside from the significantly reduced premiums, coverage limits,
right.
There are also no additional coverages under PIP. We've been talking about the medical expense benefits, but the standard policy also includes other benefits, such as income continuation,
right.
if you're injured in the accident and unable to work. Also, essential services benefits, we can talk about if you'd like to. There's actually also a death benefit and a funeral expense benefit as part of the standard. Those are not a part of the basic.
Okay, but by regulation, in every standard policy, that's going to be incorporated as part of the PIP coverage. In other words, this would just automatically be there as a function of the coverage in a standard policy?
In a standard policy, that's correct. Right. In a standard, you also have the option to elect increased benefits. The standard policy has a basic income continuation level of $100 per week,
right,
to a maximum of $5,200. And there's a collateral source rule. So if you, for example, are in this car accident and you're injured and you're unable to work and you qualify for temporary disability, if temporary disability pays you $100 or more per week, you won't get anything from your PIP income continuation. Under the standard policy, you can elect to increase that. You could say take $500 a week or $700 a week.
Right.
Still subject to the collateral source rule, but you can increase the income continuation. That is not an option on the basic policy.
Can you increase the other options, such as the funeral expenses or things like that?
Funeral expenses are capped. You can increase them, but only up to $10,000.
So the only thing that you really can't increase beyond its limit is the medical part, the $250,000 on the standard policy.
That's correct, and I think I just misspoke, by the way. The $10,000 is not for the funeral benefits. It's for...
Is it a death benefit?
Thank you. It's the death benefit.
Okay.
The $2,000 is for the funeral benefit.
That would be an expensive funeral.
It would.
All
It
right.
would. One other thing. Forgive me again for interrupting.
Sure.
One other thing about the basic policy. Even though it's capped at $15,000 for medical expense benefits, if you sustain a head or spinal injury, or for certain services that are rendered at a trauma center immediately after the accident, you can still get benefits up to $250,000.
Beyond the $15,000.
Correct.
So that is kind of an exception to the rule. You have, in those rare situations where you need this extraordinary care,
Right.
the PIP benefit will be up to $250,000.
Can be, yes.
Okay. Now, this is a pretty stripped-down policy when you're talking about a basic policy, but yet it would make you street legal in the sense that if you purchased it, that's it, right?
That's correct.
Now, would you say, just as a person, just not as a PIP arbitrator or not even as an attorney, that by purchasing a basic policy, you're paying the maximum amount of dollars for the minimum amount of coverage? I mean, would you say that that's a bad deal in that regard?
I can tell you that I, for myself, have never even entertained a thought of purchasing a basic policy.
Like for your family, you would never do that?
I would never do it.
Okay. So let's say there's let's assume for the sake of argument that there's an insurance company that advertises on TV. It says, you come with us, we'll save you 50%. Okay? Well, by saving you 15%, though, it's got to come out of the other end in terms of the amount of coverage you're getting, I would think. You know? And I'm just wondering if by cutting down the amount of coverage and thereby decreasing the amount of premium, that people, again, are paying the maximum amount of money for the minimum amount of coverage.